an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Deep Wizardry by Diane Duane, the second book in the Young Wizards. Is it Young Wizards? See? I don't know. Chapters 1, 2, and 3. Brought to you by Rosalie, who is in the audience right now. In these chapters, our old heroes are back at it again, except this time underwater. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha, and thank you again to Rosalie for commissioning this episode. I had really expected that maybe everyone only liked the first book in the series because nobody ever decided, not only did nobody step up to commission the second book, but nobody even mentioned doing that. There was nobody asking for it. There was nobody so I kind of was like, well, I guess everybody kind of likes the first book the best, or thought that just the first book would give me the overall impression of the series sufficiently enough that they were satisfied with that. And then here comes Rosalie out of left field being like, no, read that shit. To which I said, all right, ma'am. And I am realizing that because of what I do, that because of the fact that so much of the gimmick of my show depends on me being completely unspoiled, that I have trained myself to not notice clues because it may interfere with my later enjoyment of a certain storyline. And so that is the excuse that I will use to explain my complete surprise that despite the fact that Nita and Kit are literally underwater on the cover of this book in the image that I used when I created the banner for this show, I was still surprised that they wind up on a beach talking to sea animals. Guys, I'm not that quick, apparently. I'm being totally genuine. It took me a minute when she's like, I'm going down to the beach. And I'm like, the beach? How does she live near the... What? Right out of the gate, I was completely confused. And then it turns out that they're on vacation and Kit's here too. And she's swimming in the water. Still not getting it. Until a dolphin comes up and pokes at her and is like, oh, a wizard. And then disappears. And I'm still kind of like, are they going to do something with dolphins? Guys... I guess my brain is not firing on all cylinders today. I got a lot happening today, so I'm going to blame that too. But yeah, so this whole thing, I have so many questions about this, but I'm going to start at the beginning here, which is Nita sneaking out to find Kit and Pancho, who is Kit's dog, who they can talk to now, which, I really enjoy the fact that even though they can talk to him, really they don't need to be able to talk to him because that dog really has the same thing on his mind as most dogs do, we assume. Pretty much it's the sort of thing maybe there's more to this dog than meets the eye. No, there's exactly what you expect to this dog. He wants to play and he wants treats. And when she asks where Kit is, he's just kind of like, oh, I don't know. Not super helpful. Don't get me wrong. I like Pancho. I have no problem with Pancho. But I just find it funny that despite this ability to be able to talk to the dog, it doesn't really add much to the experience, I feel like. So far, at least. And we find out that she is on vacation with her parents in a beach house in the Hamptons for 2 weeks, which that's expensive. Her father specifically said, we'll rent a house and live beyond our means, which I'm like, you know what, buddy? All right. I like that you're just going to say it. And it says it hadn't taken Nita much begging to get her folks to let her friend Kit Rodriguez go along with them, or to get Kit's folks to say yes. Both families were delighted that their children had each finally found a close friend. Nita and Kit laughed about that sometimes. Their families knew only the surface of what was going on, which was probably for the best. It is significant to me that there's this moment of like, oh, our parents don't know everything that's going on, when in like later on we find out that it seems that Nita actually has a little bit of a crush on Kit, and she hasn't even quite like gotten to the point of admitting that to herself, but her mom can sense it when she says that Kit's great, and she gets a look from her mom that makes her be like, for a boy, whatever. Like immediately sort of downplaying that whole aspect of it. So it's like, maybe your parents don't understand, the wizard aspect, but I think they sense something else is going on that maybe you haven't quite caught up with yet. And I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this, because it's the sort of thing that, like, on the one hand, I don't love that a boy and girl character are being like put in this position where they're maybe into each other, because like it's just sort of tired. On the other hand, when you're a young girl who hasn't been around a lot of different people, who doesn't have a lot of friends, if you're constantly hanging out with one particular boy, growing a crush on that boy, if you're, straight or bi or whatever, is sort of a natural thing that just happens because of proximity when you're that age. Like, I think that we can all agree we had crushes on people that were like merely because of convenience and not even necessarily because the person was that great. It was just that they were there all the time. So what I'm saying is that while I'm not exactly excited about that, it does feel pretty fair to do it as an author. They're at that age, man. They're at that age. So Nita is heading out. Pancho knocks her down and has nasty fish breath. She tells him to go and find Kit and jumps in the water. And there is when she gets poked by that dolphin for the first time. And the dolphin is... I'm trying to find the exact spot because... here it is. Okay. The sight of the slick-skinned shape in the water stopped her breath until she realized what she was looking at. A slender body, 10 feet long, a blowhole, and an amused eye that looked at her sidelong, and a long beaked face that wore a permanent smile. She reached out a hesitant hand, and under her touch the dolphin turned lazily, rolling sideways, brushing her skin like warm, moonlit satin. So when she uses the language, the speech... the dolphin rolls over and stares at her and says, "A wizard!" and then just like swims away. All right. I'm going to be honest with you all. I have a prejudice against dolphins. I don't know why. I feel like I read something like a ways back at some point in my life about how dolphins are assholes. That we like assign them this like adorable sort of, and that they're really actually like the bullies of the ocean. I don't remember where I read it. I don't remember the specifics of it. I just remember the thrust of whatever I read was that we think they're so cute, and they're huge douchebags. And we only find them cute because they do tricks and stuff for us. But that they are actually smart enough to like sort of manipulate human beings, which is real scary. And so I am trying to fight the impulse to be like, ew, fucking dolphin, get out of here. Even though I know most people like swimming with dolphins is literally a fantasy situation. But for me, no. Dolphins, I don't trust dolphins. I feel like being amongst a bunch of dolphins is like going to my boyfriend's family's church, where they have a real nice veneer and they're presenting their best side to me, but I know that they're one step away from talking about how great Trump is. So that's where I'm at with dolphins. And I just felt like I should be straightforward with you all on that and just be honest about it. So dolphins, they're on my, they're officially on my shit list. And right now I'm like just kind of putting that on pause temporarily for the sake of the story. And when she gets out and talks to, Kit about it, he says that the rocks are upset, that he was talking to the rocks earlier and that they are shook. And I love that phrase nowadays just means something so different, because he's like, well, they were shook. And I was like, oh shit, they were shook. What were they shook over? No, he means literally they got shaken by the ground. So yeah, I'm just, what I'm saying is, reading this, I brought a lot of weird baggage and preconceptions that I didn't even realize I had to this story this time around for whatever reason. But the earth shook once, and she says, oh, come off it. This isn't California. Long Island doesn't have earthquakes. Once it did. The rocks remember. I wonder what the dolphin wanted. So he tells her, like, he feels like he wants to go and talk to the dolphin again. But she's like, listen, we really have to go home because they're going to freak out. And we can come back out after they're asleep. But for now, we have to pretend to be good kids and just go home and go to bed the way we're supposed to go. As it turns out, her little sister definitely notices that they sneak out. But that's the end of the first chapter, is them agreeing to do that. So then we have the wizard song is chapter 2. And Nita is sitting by the window looking down at her book, which has a lot more information in it now that she and Kit finished their first ordeal. And also, it has her name in it. And when they first came down, it had said on vacation, only contact in emergencies next to her name. But now it says status on assignment. And so essentially, she's been called into action. Despite having been on a vacation, which, I guess that's part of the job, but it just feels real presumptuous. And I don't care for this book being so disrespectful of her boundaries. So I'm just going to say that. And let's see. Oh yeah. And she checks on Tom and Carl as well. They were promoted to senior from the advisory wizard level. And as she's expected, their listing reads, on sabbatical, emergencies only. This is real fun. I like this part. They'd thrown a party to celebrate their promotion. The guests had been a select group. More of them had appeared out of nowhere than arrived through the front door. Several had spent the afternoon floating in midair. Another had spent it in the fish pond, submerged. Human beings had been only slightly in the majority at the party, and Nita became very careful at the snack table after her first encounter with the dip made from Pennsylvania crude oil and fresh ground iron filings. Yeah. That's some C.S. Lewis shit right there. Do y'all remember that? I think it's in Prince Caspian, where there's that party and the trees come to the party and the animals come to it, and the trees have like this huge plate that looks like it's covered in all different kinds of chocolate. And I think it's Susan who tries a piece of it, or maybe it's Peter. And it turns out it's all different kinds of dirt and loam and topsoil and whatnot. So yeah, he gets a little suckered into it because he's like, ooh, and then gets a mouthful of dirt. Yikes. Do you know what? I'm gonna, there is nothing quite like the very specific trauma of expecting a certain food only to find out that what you ate was totally not that. Like, for example, thinking that this is going to be iced tea and you take a big gulp and it's actually like fucking whiskey. Or, I'm trying to think of what's something that you could mistake for something else. One time, I think that I thought something was mashed potatoes because it was in a bowl, like on the counter, and somebody was and it turned out to be frosting. Things like this that just, you have these moments of excitement and getting your mouth ready for something, and then all of a sudden your body's like, wait, no, that is not a thing. I bought what I thought was a chicken salad sandwich and killed myself on tuna for 2 years. Ooh. Yeah, because those things are close enough in appearance for sure. But God, you couldn't, like, the flavor of tuna. I personally love tuna in practice, but the word tuna and the knowledge of what tuna is really like, is super gross. So it's one of those things that I have to kind of not think about what it is when I start eating it, because I really do like the flavor of it. But at first I'm just like, oh God, oh, what is this? Oh, so yeah, I just wanted to mention that. So yeah, she's on active status, and she kind of sighs to herself and it's like, well, I guess whatever comes up, we're going to have to handle it. And Kit finally, he comes out of the window, and they head over to the water, and Kit uses a spell to run out over the top of the water rather than swimming into it, which is cool and all. And I guess it keeps them safe from, like, sharks that are in the water just going nuts on them initially, because they can at least, like, sort of jump away and hide. Or not hide, but just avoid them for a little while. But it does feel like super, super impractical. And it did make me wonder, because they are so ungainly as they're running over the water, because it's described as like they're running over the surface of a waterbed mattress. Anybody have any, like, mental images about Christ really having, like, uneven footing, and instead of this, like, very dignified walk to the ship, he's like, oh, and everybody's still like, whoa, is he walking on water? Like, it's still impressive, but it doesn't have the gravitas that, like, we picture it having. So yeah, it's still rad that he could do it, but they had to leave that part of the story out when they told it to other people later, because it just sort of undermined the whole vibe. So I could not stop thinking about that. So, because obviously in this universe, I really do feel like Jesus had to be a wizard, right? Because he's fighting for light and goodness, and the story that's told later about, like, one of the whales, like, actively sacrificing herself on behalf of. That's very Christ-like. It feels parallels. So anyway, they finally get their attention is caught by one of the dolphins, who is like, oh my God, you are so late. Can you please come with us? Hurry up. And they wind up dropping down into the water by the time, like, this dolphin gets there, to hold on to it so that it can drag them where they need to be. But as it's dragging them toward the area they need to go, there are a bunch of sharks there. So we have a combo of things happening, which is, like, Kit doesn't actually tell Nita that he's about to drop the spell that's holding them above the water. So that's a little bit of a shock for her when she gets dropped in. And then, shark attack threat, which the movie Jaws is mentioned a couple times. Remind me when this was written, because Jaws came out in what, 78? 79? It was the late 70s, right? I do not remember. Is it 82 or 83? Is it that late? Okay. God, everybody's clothes are, like, so, but I guess I forget that, like, the tail end of fashion carries over into the next decade. So let's see. She's beached and the tide's coming in. She's hurt too badly. The hunters are after her and she can't do anything. What hunters? The hunters, it said in a series of annoyed squeaks and whistles. The ones with teeth. Who else? What kind of wizards are they turning out these days anyway? All right, Dolphin, don't be a douchebag about it. And shark shapes leaped and twisted in it. Shapes with two different kinds of fins. Kit! Neats, Kit said, not sounding happy. There really aren't sharks here. The guy from the Coast Guard said so last week. Tell them, the dolphin said angrily. Yeah, dude, come on. Like, here goes a guy who's like, well, we literally walked on water about 30 seconds ago, but I cannot believe that there are sharks in this water. Listen, Kit, get with the program, buddy. Shit isn't what you think it is. It's not that hard. So Nita brings this idea up. She's like, Kit, why don't you use that freeze spell? And I will feed you power, and you can use it on these sharks so that they are not able to attack us, which is a good idea. But I also forgot that, or it's not even, because I'm about to say I also, but I don't think it's so much a case of Kit forgetting that sharks need to keep moving in order to not die. I think it's a case of Kit not even thinking that we want the sharks alive in the first place. Like, in his mind, the sharks being dead would be fine. And it's not until he sees the urgency of the whale who's like, no. We need, like, come on, fix that. We're maybe going to need their help. They're creatures just like you and me. It caught me off guard, to be honest. And I liked it. I really did. Like, I liked that consideration and, you know, sharks being potential allies somewhere down the road, just not right now. So it just added another layer of something interesting. And I found this interesting as well. Nita did her part, quickly saying the 3 most dangerous words in all wizardry, the words that give all of a wizard's power over into another's hands. She felt it going from her, felt Kit shaking as he wound her power, her trust, into the spell. And then she took all her fright, her anger at the sharks, her pity for the poor wailing bulk on the sand, and let Kit have those too. So he manages to sink these sharks temporarily, and they get up and talk to the whale, who tells him to get them moving again because they're not in the water anymore, so they're not going to be able to hurt you. But also, this whale is fucked up, and it turns out that she's been bitten by sharks a couple times, more than a couple, but mostly the biggest injury that she has is from an exploding harpoon, which, I mean, listen, I don't have a problem with hunting, in theory, but there are certain, what's the word I want? I feel like there are certain circumstances that make certain types of hunting really fucking gross. And we know that whales, like, we have been aware that their numbers dwindled so suddenly, so precipitously, that we were in danger of just, like, eradicating half of them. And the fact that there are still people out there who are willing to not only hunt whales still, but to use exploding harpoons like this, which just feel like bad sportsmanship, straight up gross, sort of like overpowered, unnecessary aggression, that I just find repellent. And this whole thing is just really upsetting to me. So this whale, whose name is like Scree, I'm going to go with Scree for right now, unless you guys want to correct me on something. This whale is, first of all, holds no ill will towards the sharks, because the sharks are just doing what sharks do. But also is upset because the exploding harpoon, there was a second one, I guess. And that one killed the person who was training her, the other whale, whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce right now. And so she had like a mentor who's dead now, which fucking is awful. And her injury is really bad enough that she's not able to just get in the water and swim away. Like, not only is she injured enough for that to be a bad idea, but obviously getting back in the water will just release blood into the water and the sharks will come straight back for her again. So part of her escape here depends on the sharks being, basically on the sharks forgetting while they were here, because the blood dissipates and they just leave. And it comes Nita's turn to show off her power. This is some shit, guys. So, oh man. Nita she says healing's part of my specialty. And that's true. But this is not a person. And not only is it not a human being, but this is a level of magic healing that she has not done before. There's a whole section in her book called Major Surgery that she just straight up kind of ignored because she just never thought she'd need it. Which I find baffling, because if I were a wizard and I was good at healing, I feel like Major Surgery is the first thing that I would look at, because I would want to know if there was any way to prevent people from having to go through really horrific treatments, in life. Would there be anything that I could potentially do? And also, like, minor cuts and bruises don't feel to me as urgent. So Major Surgery, I would want to learn first, which I'm not sure is necessarily the right way to approach it in terms of like learning, but I think it would be the first thing that I would read through just out of curiosity. So all of them called for one supply in common, all of the different spells that she can use, the blood of the wizard performing them. Nita began to shake. Seeing someone else bleed was bad enough. The sight of her own blood in quantity tended to make her pass out. Oh, great, she said, for there was no avoiding what had to be done. So here comes a really fun little moment. She has to get some blood, and they don't have a knife or anything, so she has to go to a dolphin named Hotshot and get him to bite her to draw blood. And this dolphin is kind of a dick, but like real low key. He's like, not a dick is too strong. He's just kind of a sarcastic, like, and I love after he bites, like she's like, don't do it too hard. And he's like, do what? And she's in the middle of being like, the bite. When he bites her, he doesn't like give her a chance to even think about it, which is one of my favorite things. Like if you've gotten a shot somewhere and they're like, okay, we're going to do it on 3, 1, 2. And then they do it on 2 so that you don't have a chance to flinch or, really like dig into your worry. And then after he bites her, he says, needs salt, which I love. There's a moment in Crocodile Dundee where there is an Aboriginal person who is eating a giant tarantula that they had like roasted on the fire. And somebody asks him, are you enjoying that? And he looks up and says, needs garlic. And I remember as a little kid, I laughed so hard at that. I just found that so hysterical. So it turns out that this magic, no wound can be healed unless the pain of its inflicting is fully experienced. Yikes. Yikes, guys. There was nothing to do but read and flee, wailing terror song and grief song into the water until the first pain came, the sick, cold sharpness in her side. Nita knew she was sagging, knew Kit was holding her up from behind, but all that was far away. The second pain came, the fierce mouths ripping and worrying at her till she couldn't go forward anymore, only flail and thrash in an agony of helplessness and revulsion. Then the third pain hit, and Nita lost control of everything and started to fall down as the white fire blew up in her side. But the words were speaking her now, as they do in the more powerful wizardries. Though inwardly Nita screamed and cried for release, it did her no good. Her own power was loose, doing what she had told it to, and the wizardry wouldn't let her go until it was done. When it was, finally, it dropped her on her face in the sand, and she felt Kit go down with her, trying to keep her from breaking something. So, that was fucking traumatic. Traumatic and dramatic. There was a lot of dramatics happening. But when she opens her eyes, the biggest injury where the whale had been blown up is healed over. And although it's like clearly there's some scar tissue happening, I mean, there's no more blood, which is pretty fucking impressive. And many of the smaller shark bites were completely gone, as were the burns from the harpoon's rope where it had gotten tangled around Sri's flukes. I forgot about the harpoon ropes. Ugh, the whole thing is just so fucking ghastly. And her own bite mark from Hot Shot is all healed over as well. Like, there's little pink marks, but it's mostly gone. And Kit's like, hey, are you all right? And she's like, no, yeah, I'm fine. And then she vomits. That's one of the things that I kind of like about this series is like the really intense physical reactions that they have to casting this magic. Like, after Kit does the freezing spell on all of the sharks, he like almost faints. It's serious. And it also, like, Nita does as well, because she just handed him all of her magic. So it's really draining for both of them. So Sri she tells them, all right, I'm going to read her official, like, plea for help. As the only remaining candidate senior wizard for the waters about the gates, by wizard's right, I request and require your assistance. Intervention will take place locally and last no more than 10 lights and darks. The probable level of difficulty does not exceed what the manual describes as dangerous, though if invention is delayed, the level may escalate to extremely dangerous or critical. Will you assist? And then Sri is like, God, I'm just a baby. Why did I get stuck with this? And the two of them sort of soften because she's saying the very same thing that they said when they were on assignment in this like parallel universe last book. So she says that she wants to meet them a couple hours after the sun is high and they have more to talk about. And she gets into the water completely unconcerned that the sharks are going to be about. Like, she thinks that they have dispersed. Hot Shot and his people are one of the breeds the sharks hate worst. When there are enough of them around, few sharks would dare come into the area. Hot Shot will be calling more of his people in tonight and tomorrow. That's part of the work I'm doing. And Nita's about to be like, yeah, but how are you going to get out of here? And Kit has to be like, girl, look. And it turns out the water, the tide is coming in. And in a moment, Sri is going to be completely swept up and it'll be no problem for her. So then we go into the third chapter, A Song of Choice. And this is when we really get like the meat of what's going on here. This chapter starts off with Nita's mother asking her if she's okay because she was like up all night, clearly looks tired. She's eating like a lot more than she normally does. And her mother's just kind of concerned about her. And I forgot that earlier, like Nita's making fun of the fact that Kit tries to walk on the water and like tips over and falls. And she's like, I better not make fun of him too much or he'll deck me. And later on, be careful he doesn't hear you call him El Nino, Nita's mother said mildly, or he'll deck you again. Yo, what is Kit doing going around decking Nita over every little thing? And how does Nita's mom know about it and not say, hey, don't deck my fucking kid? Kit, what are you doing, dude? We're fine. Kit's great. Nita saw a slightly odd look come into her mother's eyes. For a boy, she added hurriedly. Well, her mother said, be careful. And she took the watering can off into the living room. Guys, we all know what she was talking about, do we not? Parents. And as she walks out to meet Kit again, this is when Nita runs across her sister, Diane. It's so... I have never seen this name before. I don't know how to pronounce it. If you pronounced every single syllable of the vowels or what. But yeah, that moment of Dareen just being like, yeah, I totally know that you snuck out the window last night. Like, I wasn't worried at all. But of course, Nita is like, did you fucking tell them that I snuck out the window? And she's like, no, I don't tell anybody anything. And I like it. When Diane had needed glasses, when she started getting beaten up at school, and when she was exposed to German measles, nobody had heard about it from her. Which, damn, these sound like some stories. Like, Diane, I want to know what the fuck is going on with you, lady. It sounds like you've got some adventures of your own over here. You like him, huh? Diane said. Nita glared at Diane. I'm saying Diane now. Diane, and Rosalie says she says Daireen. I'm saying Daireen because it's like dare, like a dairy. That's the way the letters are set up in the beginning. Nita glared at Daireen, opened her mouth to start shouting, then remembered the open windows. Yeah, I like him, Nita said, and turned red at having to make the admission. The problem was there was no lying to Daireen. She always found out the truth sooner or later and made your life unbearable for having tried to hide it from her. You messing around, Daireen said. Daireen, Nita said quietly, but with murder in it. No, we are not messing around. Okay, just wondered. You going swimming? No, Nita said, snapping the strap of her bathing suit very obviously at her sister. I thought I'd go skiing. Wake up, lame brain. And as she heads out, her sister yells something about watching out for sharks, and Nita, sprints because her mother has been super paranoid lately, and all she needs is her mom to hear that and be like, never mind, you know what? I don't think you should go out there today. When she finds Kit, he is playing fetch with Poncho so that Poncho passes out cold when they need to have their meeting with Sri. And Sri, all right, let's get to this friggin'. Later on, whenever Nita thought of her first real conversation with Sri, what she remembered best were the two seagulls who insisted on sitting in her lap the whole time. They were heavy and not housebroken. So this is what Sri says. There's been trouble for wizards on the land lately. The trouble's been felt in the sea, too. Out here, we've been having quakes on the seafloor much often than we should be having them. Severe ones. And some other old problems have been getting worse. Let's see. The dirt they throw into the water from the high and dry. The place with all the high things on it. New York City, Manhattan, actually, said Kit. The water close to it is getting so foul the fish can't breathe it for many thousands of lengths out. Those that can are mostly sick, and many more of the boats that eat whales have been out here recently. The past few months there's been a great slaughter. Yikes. That's rough. Things have not been good, Sri said. I know less about the troubles on land, but the sea tells us that the land wizards have been troubled of late, that there was some great strife of powers on the high and dry. We saw the moon go out one night. So we get all of that, this reminder of what happened last book. And the fact that they were the ones involved with when the moon went out, Sri really feels is some kind of sign that they're supposed to be working together. Let's see. The lost moon, that night, the earthquakes, the fouled water, and the whale-eating ships, they're all its doing one way or another. It took a defeat in that battle you two were in, Sri said. It's angry, and the problems we've been having are symptoms of that anger. So we have to bind it, make it less harmful, as the first sea people bound it a long time ago. Then things will be quiet again for a while. And here comes the thing that's a little confusing to me. I'm straightening up so as to get more invested in my point here. Kit says, you said something about the sea telling you things. And Sri has to be like, oh, yeah. Sorry, you guys have other people to tell you, but our sea tells us how the magic works and leads us on our way to the next thing that we need to learn. And then mentions the binding of the lone power. And when Kit says, when she says that it's bound, Kit's it really did not seem like it was bound when we dealt with it just a little while ago. Which Sri sort of is yeah, that's how time works. That there is a weird overlap where it is successful and unsuccessful and like already redeemed all at the same time. Which I'm trying to find the exact quote. First of all, I'm jumping ahead. Like, I'm trying to find the actual quote because I know that I highlighted it. Let me look on my phone and let me see. Paging through her book. Nita still wanted to laugh. Lord of the Humors. Yeah, it's not. I thought I highlighted it, but I can't find it. But it's something that, like, if he's already redeemed and this is all happening at the same time, I don't understand, like, the need to continue to fight if this is all happening. It's hard for me to wrap my head around time stuff, though, I'll be honest with you guys. Like, time travel, I would never write anything that includes time travel in it because it's too difficult to keep track of. And yeah, I'm trying to find the exact spot, but I can't find it. Okay. The high and dry is what she keeps calling their land, which I really think is funny. All right. So moving on, Devin says basically the lone power is outside of time. Okay. I guess I can accept that. I mean, yeah, it's just sort of like when she says, like, well, that worked. You giving him the option to be different. Did you know that it worked? Because he is also redeemed. And I'm just like, how? What? Yeah, so she's talking about, Sri says, there was already a sort of death in the sea, but only the kind where your body stops. Everyone knew it wasn't permanent, and it didn't hurt much. You might get eaten, but you would go on as part of someone else. No one was afraid of not being his own self anymore. I guess that's the simplest way of putting it. That calm way of life drove the lone power wild with hate, and it swore to attach fear and pain to it and make it a lot more interesting. The whale's job then was what it is now, to be masters and caretakers for the fish and the smaller sea people, the way you two-leggers are for the dry land beasts. So naturally, the only wizards in the sea were whales, just as humans were originally the only ones on land. That early on, there were only 10 whale wizards, all seniors. Nihiwinyi, they were called, the lords of the humors. Those 10 whales ruled the sea under the powers. If the lone power wanted to trick the sea into the great death, it had to trick the 10. Then all the life they ruled would be stuck with the great death too. So the lone one went to the 10 in disguise, pretending to be a stranger, a new whale sent to them so that they could decide under which of their masteries it fell. And as each one questioned the lone power, the stranger whale offered each of them the thing he wanted most if he would only accept the gift the stranger would give him. And he showed them just enough of his power to prove that he could do it. Uh-oh, Kit said softly. I've heard that one before. Apples and snakes, Nita said. Yes, the pattern repeats. One after another, the lone one tempted the 10. The sea was silent then and gave them no advice. Some people say that the powers wanted the 10 to make up their own minds. But however that might have been, 3 of the 10 took the gift and fell. 3 of them were undecided. 3 of them rejected the gift, and the lone power needed a majority of the lords to accept death, or its victory would only be partial. So this is when the 10th comes in. The Silent Lord, they called her. She was the youngest of them, and each of the other 9 tried to bring her around to his own way of thinking. The lone one came to her too, and tempted her as it had tempted the others. You know, though, that it's the youngest wizard who has the most power, and where the other lords were deceived, the Silent Lord wasn't. She realized what the stranger was, and what it was trying to do. She was faced with a difficult choice. She knew that if she rejected the stranger, the fighting would only go on among the other 9. Sooner or later, they or their successors would accept the gift and doom the whole sea to the great depth. But she also knew something else that the sea had told her long before, and that others have found out since. If one knows death is coming, any death, from the small ones to the great one, and is willing to accept it fully and experience it fully, then the death becomes something else, a passage, not an ending, not only for himself, but for others. I like that. It's very much like, to a well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure. So the Silent Lord did that. Luck, or the powers, brought one more creature into the singing uninvited. It was the one fish over whom no mastery was ever given, the pale slayer, whom we call the Master Shark. The Silent Lord decided to accept the gift that the stranger offered her, and then to transform the gift and make it safe, she gave herself up willingly to die. She dived into a strand of razor coral, and the Master Shark smelled her blood in the water, and, well, he accepted her sacrifice. All right. I'm gonna tell you guys straight up, I'm not entirely clear on this. The Silent Lord knows that death is not something to be afraid of, even if it's this sort of oblivion death that nobody has really dealt with before. So, despite knowing that that's the death that she's facing in this situation because of the lone power, she just decides to let herself die because that takes the fear out of it. I don't really understand how that works for everyone else. When that happened, the lone power went wild with rage, but that did it no good. The Silent One's sacrifice turned death loose in some of the sea, but not all. And even where it did turn up, death was much weaker than it would have been otherwise. To this day, there are fish and whales that have astonishing lifespans, and some that never seem to die of natural causes. The sharks, for instance, some people say that's a result of the Master Shark's acceptance of the Silent Lord's sacrifice. But the important thing is that the lone power had put a lot of its strength into its death wizardry. It had become death itself in a way, and when death was weakened, so was the lone one. It fell to the sea floor, which opened for it and closed on it afterward, and there it lies bound. Here's the thing. Here's where he says bound. It's the usual confusion about time. All the great powers exist outside it, and all we usually see of them are the places and moments where and when. They dip into the time flow we're inhabiting. This world has always been an annoyance to the lone one. It gets frustrated here a lot, so it visits often in many forms. Devin is saying her belief and faith robbed it of its power. Belief and faith that it was just the next adventure instead of it being like something terrifying, I guess. Okay. Okay. Meanwhile, outside the time flow where things don't have to happen one after another, the lone one is eternally rebelling and eternally defeated. We gave it a chance to do something else when we fought last, Nina said. We offered it the option to stop being a dark power. And it works, Sri said, sounding very pleased. Didn't you know? It's also eternally redeemed. But meantime, we have to keep fighting the battles, even though the war's decided. Which, the war's decided, but we need to keep fighting. The war, I don't feel like that means the war is decided. It means you have to make I don't know. I'm sorry, guys. Let me think on this. This is hard for me to wrap my head around a little bit. The lone one's going to take a long while to complete its choice. And if we get lazy or sloppy about handling its thrashing around, a lot of people are going to die. The one symptom that tells us the 12 songs need to be reenacted has been the sea floor being shaken up recently. We do the song at intervals anyway to make sure the story is never forgotten. But when the lone power gets troublesome, as it seems to be doing now, we reenact the song and bind it quiet again. Rosalie is saying the final battle hasn't happened yet in linear time, but outside of the time we know it was won. That means we still need to fight it at some point. Gotcha. Okay, I'm getting it. So, in another time in the future, we know that this has happened already, but we're in the time where we have to make that happen so that future people can say that it happened. See, this shit, I know it shouldn't be like as confusing as it is, but my brain doesn't work well that way. So then she starts talking about the way that this song works and how you have to pick each whale wizard carefully for each part. I have to work it out myself, and I need help from wizards who can handle trouble if it comes up. You two can obviously manage that, and the 10 will listen to you. They'll respect you after what you went through up in the high and dry. And I find it really interesting. Like, first of all, she tells them that, like, we're going to have to transform you both into whales. Kit is such a dick. He says, why not, Neats? You have been putting on a little weight lately. Kit, can you fucking not? Between fat jokes and apparently decking Nita whenever she annoys you, I think you need to get a little control of yourself. So knock it off, Kit. But it turns out they both wind up having to shape change. And Kit asks Nita if she saw the news report about the volcano the other night. There was some scientist on. He said that hot water vents had been opening up all of the sudden off the continental shelf, and he said that if those little tremors we've been having keep getting worse, it could open the bottom right up and there'd be a volcano. The least it'd do would be to boil the water for miles, but it could also break Long Island in two. The beaches would go right underwater, and Manhattan skyscrapers aren't built for earthquakes. The rocks remembered. That's why they were upset. And Nita, who had been sort of like, I don't know about this, like, shape-shifting into a whale and singing a song thing, when she thinks about the fact that they're literally living on the beach right now and that's where all of the trouble's going to pop up first, she saw a very clear picture of a tidal wave of dirty, boiling water crashing down on the beach house and smashing it to driftwood. Yikes. Here's the part that I liked. When should we start it, Sri? She said. Dawn tomorrow. There's little time to waste. Hotshot will be going with us. He'll be singing the Fourth Lord, the Wanderer, in the song. Dawn... Nita chewed her lip. Could it be a little later? We've got to have breakfast with my parents or they'll freak out. Parents? Sri looked from Nita to Kit in shock. You're still calves? Is that what you're telling me? And you went outworld into a dark place and came back? I thought you were much older. So yeah, she is quite impressed with the fact that they did what they did as little kids. And I'm hoping that she internalizes that a little bit because, you know, she's obviously already afraid of the fact that she's too young for this job. So knowing that they're also very young for the job and they still managed to pull it off has to be encouraging. All right. So let's see. Okay, here it is. Thank you, she said. Thank you very much indeed. Think nothing of it, Kit said grandly, slipping into the water and patting Sri on one big ribbed flank. Nita slid into the water, took hold of Sri's dorsal fin, and thought something of it all the way home, which I really like that line. So that is the end of that last chapter. So yeah, there's a lot happening here, guys. And obviously it can't go well. Like they can't just turn into whales and go sing a whale song and fix everything and now it's fine. Something has to go wrong. And I wonder what it is. And you know what I'm going to... Here's my prejudice against dolphins showing. That dolphin's going to fuck it up, isn't it? That's what's going to happen. That fucking, you involve dolphins and shit. What do you think is going to happen? Come on. I know that's what it is. You don't even have to tell me. I'll find out soon enough if somebody commissions the next 3 chapters. Eyebrow bobs. Do you guys have any questions for me before I wrap this up? There are 4 people here today. Which is, and like, this is my 3rd commission that I've done so far today. And it's been gradually getting, like, I don't think there was anybody at the first one. And then the second one, there were like a couple. And now there's 4. Slowly gets a little bit more crowded as the day moves on. All right, guys. Well, I do not see any questions. So I think I am going to wrap this up. If you're interested in commissioning the next chapters of this book for coverage, you can go to unspoiledpodcast.com/shop. And you know where to find us: facebook.com/unspoiledpod, Twitter at unspoiledshow, Instagram at unspoiledpodcast, and unspoiledpodcast.com. And if you'd like to pick up this book, you can do so at unspoiledpodcast.com/Amazon. So Thank you all again so much. And hopefully I'll be seeing you soon with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.